Hi, welcome back. It's day 4 of reading week, which means we only have 2 sessions still to go. And so far this week, if you've been able to join us, you'll know that we have been looking at the reading skills you need to develop for success in OET and in the workplace. And we've had a deep dive into reading part A and reading part B. And the recording of those sessions are now available on both our Facebook and YouTube channels at Official OET. And once the week is complete, we'll be turning them all into a playlist on YouTube. So today is all about reading part C. And I would be surprised if anyone wanted to claim this as their favorite part of the test. But this type of reading is part of any high-stakes English test. You can't avoid it if you want to prove your English proficiency for registration or migration purposes. But at least the OET texts are on healthcare topics, things you might know a little bit about or find interesting. And it's such a human characteristic to avoid doing something we don't like doing in favor of something else. And it's called procrastination. How often, for example, when you sit down to read, do you suddenly remember you need to do some laundry or that you meant to message someone or anything other than actually doing the reading? It's definitely a human frailty, procrastinating, but when it comes to testing, it's worth being disciplined, working on your skills, and having a much less stressful test day because you find you can answer the questions and then get the score that you want. Anyway, so pep talk over. Let's have a talk about how you got on if you've already had a go at the sample test that we've been discussing this week. So if you've tried reading part C already, let me know in the chat how many of the questions out of 16 you think you got right. And if this is your first session you've joined this week and you haven't yet seen the new sample test, my colleague Alex is going to add that link into our chat now, and you'll be able to download the sample test and have a look at it as we go through the answers live during today's session. All right, let's have a look. So we've got maybe 10 from Ziad. Ramakant is saying 7 or 8, perhaps correct. Mitra also suggesting 10. Ratna 8. Pamela's being positive. She thinks maybe 14. Correct. So does Diana. Amen, slightly less positive. I hope I can get 10. So that's great. Some really honest answers coming through on chat. A number of you are only saying perhaps around 50% correct. During today's session, we're going to see if we can change that confidence for your next sample test by looking at a number of the reading part C questions and answers in detail. And I'll again be using statistics and examples of real candidate answers which were kindly submitted by candidates at the end of last month to show you how you compared against your colleagues. For answers where a good proportion of those submitting in advance chose the wrong answer, we'll look at why and how you could avoid making a similar mistake on test day. And don't forget, we have our final prize giveaway, thanks to our friends at Cambridge University Press and Assessment, who have given us 2 copies of their new book, OET Trainer, to give away on each of the days that we've been looking at Part A, Part B, and Part C. So we'll be holding the giveaway at the end of today's session, and all the questions today will be about reading Part C. So make sure you pay attention to be in with a chance of winning one of the copies of that brand new book. So first of all, let's start with some basic reminders about what's involved in reading Part C and get you involved with helping me out with the answers. So let's do this as a matching activity. So candidates who are familiar with the test can help me out here getting involved. So what I'd like you to do in chat is match the numbered statements at the top with one of the lettered statements at the bottom so that you end up with 5 complete statements about reading Part C. So have a look at the 5 beginnings of a sentence at the top and which letter would you match it with at the bottom. So for example, Ziad is suggesting 1 goes with B. That's a good start. What would 2, 3, 4, and 5 go with? I'll just give you a few more minutes to have a look at those options and let me know in chat. Looks like we've got some good answers coming through. Looks like people know quite a few of the facts about reading Part C, which is great. Yeah, lovely. All right, let's go through the options together. So, as I saw coming through in chat, reading Part C has 2 longer texts, and each text is about 800 words long. And in total, there are 16 questions, which I saw a lot of you getting correct. And each question is independent of the others, meaning that you don't need to have got the previous question correct to be able to get the question you're working on correct. They're all independent. And again, I saw a lot of you in chat getting the last question correct. There are 4 answer options per question. And as we mentioned yesterday, the timing for reading Part C is combined with the reading Part B question. So you have 45 minutes in total for Parts B and C. And we recommend that you allow at least 35 of those minutes for reading Part C. And that will then give you roughly 2 minutes per question. And the approaches to take to answer the reading Part C questions are the same as those that we've explored yesterday in reading Part B, and we'll focus on them again today. And just as a reminder, they are paraphrasing the question, reading the question, then the options, and then the text, choosing the answer by eliminating incorrect options. And another strategy we'll try out today is reading the question, then the text, then the answer option. So the second and fourth strategy are similar, but just done in a different order. And we'll try both of those today because some of you might find one of those works better for you than the others. And let's get cracking with question 7. So what is the writer's reaction to Professor Winston's strategy? So straight off, we're going to try paraphrasing this into a slightly simpler question. And there are 2 options that I think we could do. What does the writer think about the strategy? Or how does the writer feel about the strategy? But what should be clear is that this question is asking us to check the writer's opinion in the paragraph. And we're going to try out that new strategy that I just mentioned. First of all, reading the text without being distracted by the answer options. So here's the text on screen now. And I want you just to look at the text and try and find evidence of the writer's opinion. And remember, someone's opinion is often revealed through their choice of language. So, for example, the adjectives and the adverbs that they use. So looking through the text, I want you to let me know in chat if you think the writer likes the idea of the strategy, they dislike the idea, or they feel unsure about the idea. So just give you a few more seconds to scan the text. Does the writer like the idea, dislike the idea, or feel unsure about the idea? All right, I've got quite a few suggestions coming through for A. Couple for B, though. Some of you are saying they like the idea. Yeah, not 100% confident on the answers coming through, but let's go through it together and we can see if that makes it clearer. So the writer seems positive about the idea. They seem to like it. And the way that we can tell this is through those choice of adjectives, words including esteemed, gifted, refreshing, the most promising. There's also some less positive language, so less likely to be well-rounded and aggrieved. But these adjectives are linked to Professor Winston's experience and hardworking students respectively, not what the writer's opinion is. So now that we've thought about, we think the writer likes this idea, they feel positive about it, let's look at the 4 answer options. Which one do you feel most closely matches our ideas about the writer liking the idea? And put your answers in chat. Which one do you think looks the closest match for the writer being positive or liking the idea? Yeah, we're getting lots of people suggesting A, and that's right, A is the answer. So again, looking at the paragraph, we get this sense of positivity, and in particular, that middle section, which says, it is refreshing to see public acknowledgement that recruitment strategies must assess more than academic ability. This clearly demonstrates approval of the idea. And we can also see the idea behind it, part of the question on line 3. Experience has taught him that they are less likely to be well-rounded and good team players. So 60% of candidates who submitted that answer in advance also got it correct. Of those that got it wrong, most either chose B or C. But there aren't any worries or implications mentioned in the text, and the strategy is based on experience, not a theory. So that's explanation why B or C, if you chose those answers, is incorrect. Let's look at question 8 now. The writer's purpose in the second paragraph is to highlight. And again, we can rephrase this into something slightly shorter. What is being highlighted in the second paragraph? This time around, we're going to try that other strategy of looking at the answer options before looking at the text, so that, as I said, you're trying both strategies out to see if you find one works better for you than the other. So let's see the 4 options on the screen now. Tell me which of the options, or which of the words in option A you would isolate for being most important. So remember, this is a strategy we've been practicing all week, isolating key words that show the difference between the answer options. In option A, which are the key words that you would isolate as being the main point of difference? Great, Shanza is suggesting personal qualities. Rizwana also suggesting personal qualities. Grace, personal qualities needed. Spot on, well done. So yeah, personal qualities are the keywords in option A. And here are my suggestions for the other options. So specialty fits personality in B, extensive career options in C, and challenge assessing suitability from D. So here's paragraph 2 on the screen now. It's quite short. Keeping those keywords that I've put on the screen in your mind, scan the text, and if you can find the answer, let me know in chat. Which one do you think this time is the correct answer for question 8? B. Isa, who's saying, I don't understand the question. So the question is asking us, what is the main focus? What is the highlight of this paragraph? What is the writer trying to draw attention to in this paragraph? All right, we're getting a few option Bs coming through, a few option Ds, and also a few As. So a bit of a mixed bag for this question. Most of the options are being selected. Let's look at the correct answer. The correct answer is D, and 60% of candidates who submitted their answers in advance also got this correct. And the reason for D is seen in the first sentence. A prevailing problem is how to decide on a uniform description of the traits that should be sought in the doctors of tomorrow. As well as in the last sentence, can one single recruitment strategy identify a generic set of desirable traits for all future doctors? So those two sentences both map well to the challenge and assessing candidate suitability in the question. If you chose one of the other options, can you now see why that was wrong and D is correct? Most of the candidates who submitted in advance chose B. If you chose B, do you now understand why this answer is wrong? If not, I'll tell you what to do in a few seconds, so don't worry about that. All right, we're not going to go through all of the questions in this session individually, but I'll let you know that the answer to question 9 is B, question 10 is C, and question 11, which is a vocabulary question, was A. If you didn't get these questions correct, take another look at the text and see if you can now understand why these are the correct answers and your answer was wrong. By the end of today's session, I'm also going to provide a link to a downloadable answer key for this sample test for text 1 and text 2, and that's going to explain each answer and why it's right or wrong. So there'll be more help to come if you're still struggling with some of those questions. Let's look at question 12, though, which 50% of candidates who submitted in advance got right or wrong, depending on which way you look at it. And the question is, what does the writer suggest about the tendency towards super specialization? Now, this is already a WH question, but we can still reduce it a little bit further to what does the writer suggest about super specialization? So just focusing in on the really key words can help you understanding the question better when you come to look at the text. And if we look at paragraph 6, we can see that it starts with increasing super specialization, which suggests the whole paragraph is going to cover this topic. So looking at the options first, before we try and pick out what the text might be correct, you can also help here. So let's have a look at the answer options. And I'm going to give you my suggestions for what I think would be the key words to isolate in each of them. So in option A, I'd be focusing on little opportunity, develop valuable skills. In B, generalists increasing workload. C, specialists unaware work other branches. And D, specialties attract less interest, direct contact patients. So there's quite a few key words in this one. This is a more complex question, perhaps, but you can see those key words that I've just suggested on the screen now with the paragraph. Keeping those words in your mind, or perhaps if you've already had a go at this question, if you tried these questions in advance, let me know in the chat which you think is the correct answer and try and tell me why you think this is the correct answer. So don't just say which option you think is correct. Try and tell me which line of the paragraph you think contains the answer. So which of those answer options do you think is correct for question 12? So straight away, I can see all 4 answer options are being suggested. We've got B, we've got C, we've got A, we've got D, which does really represent how the other candidates submitting in advance went. All options were suggested. So I'm going to narrow it down to 2 for you. So most of the candidates submitting in advance chose either A or C, and one of those is the correct answer. So we're going to look at both of them to look for evidence in the text. So starting off with C, let's look for evidence that this is the correct answer. But to be honest, I can't find any evidence. No branches of medicine are mentioned. Um, this would mean words like cardiology, gynecology, pediatrics, or oncology, types of branches of medicine, would be in the text. And they're not. There are no branches of medicine mentioned. And while the text says they tend to be world experts in narrow clinical areas, this can't seem to be a link to specialists maybe unaware of work carried out in other branches. My guess is if you chose this as the correct answer, and 20% of candidates submitting in advance did choose this answer, is that you based your choice on your own experience working with specialists or knowledge of working with specialists. But this is a poor strategy. For the answer to be correct, there must be evidence for it in the text. So this leaves A, and A is the correct answer, which we can see evidenced firstly in line 2. Remember, the question is about super specialists, and line 2 describes super specialists as world experts in narrow clinical areas who often interact with relatively few patients. And this covers the little opportunity part of the question, and developing valuable skills is mentioned in the last sentence, vital to maintaining high quality care in general practice. So A is the correct answer for question 12. Moving on to question 13. This also caused some issues, so let's look at this one too. The question is, in the 6th paragraph, the writer says that medical schools should. So this time I want you to have a go at rephrasing that. Who can in the chat tell me how we can rephrase that in a shorter question? So how can we reduce, in the 6th paragraph, the writer says that medical schools should, into a shorter question starting with a WH question word. So remember, those are words like who, what, where, or why. Ashwini is suggesting what should they do. Ziad, medical schools should. What medical school should do. Grace, what does the medical school do? Absolutely, good. So a simpler way of looking at that question is, what should medical schools do? So looking at the answer options, let's think about which ideas we would isolate. And again, let me know in the chat which keywords in option A would you isolate to help you understand the difference between A and the other parts, the other options for this question. What are the keywords in answer option A? Okay, IB is suggesting academic standard. Pratiksha suggesting ensure. Elowin, academic priority. Priya also suggesting priority, and Aparna, priority. Yeah, some good ideas coming through. I would recommend that, yes, academic standards is important and priority also important. And for the other answer options, I would isolate encourage graduates, GPs, teach, build relationships, patients for C, and favor applicants' interpersonal skills for D. So here's the text on the screen now. And if you've already answered this question, let me know which answer option you chose in chat, as well as a reason for your choice. Okay, so we've got some suggestions for A, some suggestions for D, also some suggestions for B. And again, you can see from the statistics in the corner of the screen that those candidates submitting in advance were also choosing all of the 4 answer options. But let me tell you, the correct answer is D. And I can show you where you can find the evidence for this and the key words that are in sentence 1. So the best way to attract doctors to this discipline is therefore to encourage the selection of future clinicians who are likely to have these traits. These 2 reference words, this and these, remind us of what we've just read. So generalists develop interpersonal skills. And then in the final sentence, we can see future health systems will require well-rounded generalists who have the skills to deal with presentations across the biopsychosocial spectrum. There's another key word, though, that's useful to us here, which is in the middle of the text, and that's the word however. At the start of that last sentence, this is also really significant. Its purpose is to show what comes next is significant. And if we compare it with what came before that word, however, we can see intellectual achievements will always be important. So this is given as a fact. We're always going to focus on intellectual achievements. Then we get the word however. And what comes next after, however, is the main point the writer is trying to make, which is that doctors need good interpersonal skills, so medical schools would be wise to favour them. This is a challenging question, and it does require you to read carefully for what the writer is getting at. But if you look at the other answer options, it's fairly straightforward to eliminate them for lack of evidence in the text. If you're not sure why, again, at the end of today's session, we'll be giving you a downloadable answer key that explains all of the answer options. The final question of text 1, question 14, was answered more successfully. 62% of candidates submitting in advance got it right. The answer was B. If you didn't get that question correct, can you take a look back at the text after the session and work out why? So that's all of the text 1 questions. Out of 8, you can see the 8 answers on the screen now. How many did you get correct? Let me know in chat how many of those you got correct. Don't be shy. It's absolutely fine if you didn't get all 8 correct. We're here to help and support you. All right, so we've got a few 6s, some 5s, some 4s even, and some 7s. So congratulations if you were getting a higher number correct. But as I said, this is the place to learn. If you're not getting a good number of those questions correct, we've got the strategies here to help you. And hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be feeling a bit clearer about how you should be approaching these questions. The average from candidates submitting in advance might make you feel a little bit better as well. So the average from them was 4.7 answers correct. So obviously not a great score, still some room for improvement. So you could feel in good company if you were getting a similar result. And as I keep mentioning, we'll be downloading an answer key that looks a little bit like this. We'll be making that available to you at the end of the session, and it covers both text 1 and text 2 and explains why each answer is right or wrong. So let's move on to text 2 now. Of the candidates who submitted in advance, the average number of questions they got correct here was lower. It was 3.2. And in fact, 6 students who submitted in advance only got 1 question correct from this text, and 2 scored 0. And I've got some theories about why the average number is so low for text 2. Have a look at the theories that I'm putting up on the screen now, and let me know if any of these relate to you. So number 1, I'm not able to concentrate so well by the time I get to text 2. Number 2, I have less than 10 minutes left to answer the text 2 questions. And number 3, I'm starting to doubt myself and my ability to choose the correct answer for text 2 questions. So if any of those relate to you, let me know in the chat now. Which of those, maybe all of them, but which of those perhaps in particular do you think is a reason why you might not do so well in text 2? So I can see quite a few 2s coming through. I've less than 10 minutes left to answer the text 2 questions, and some 3s. I'm starting to doubt myself. Some people are saying yes, all of them. I don't think I'm able to concentrate so well. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I'd added a 4th option, I find the text and questions in text 2 more difficult. A lot of you would have chosen that option as well, but that isn't the real reason why you struggle with text 2. The reason you find text 2 more difficult is likely to be caused by one of the 3 options that are on the screen at the moment. And we'll come back to these reasons in the advice section coming up. But first of all, let's look at a couple of questions from text 2 and practice those strategies again, just so that you have a bit more practice with them in this sample test. So we're going to look at question 16, and the question is, what point does the writer make about open access medical records in the second paragraph? So for this question, we're going to try again the strategy of looking at the text before the options. So before I show you the text, just in your head, I want you to practice that first strategy, which is isolating the keywords from the question in your mind. Just give you a few seconds to do that. And then here is the text. So I want you to read through the text in 1 minute and then have a go at telling me in the chat a summary sentence. Now, you might remember if you were with us on Monday, we talked about how to summarize a paragraph of text. To do that, you're looking at the overall meaning that the writer is trying to give you in their paragraph. It's usually quite a short statement, a summary. So I'll just give you another 30 seconds, read the text, and then try and summarize in a short statement what you think the main overall message the writer is trying to communicate in this paragraph. Any suggestions? What do you think is the overall message the writer is trying to communicate in this paragraph? Thanks, Diana, for your suggestion. So patient access to doctor's notes. Amish is suggesting the doctors rather have open notes. Thank you for those suggestions. Bibin is saying, despite all challenges, they've made it possible. Yeah, I like those suggestions. This was what I was suggesting. So opening access to medical records went much better than doctors expected. So a little bit of what those 3 suggestions I read out were including. But I think the key bit of this is it went better than the doctors expected. So having summarized the text, having looked at what the text is about, let's now look at the answer options. And let me know in chat which of those answer options, and there may be more than one at this stage, which of those answer options do you think you would want to look at more closely in the text to because you think one of those might be the answer option. We're getting some suggestions for B. Yeah. And some suggestions for C. Yeah, I agree. And students who submitted in advance were generally choosing either B or C. So let's have a look at them against the text. So in B, the keywords are really doctors' assumptions about the impact, and C, the impact of implementation being worse for doctors than patients. So let's have a look at the text. And in sentences 2 and 3, we can see doctors were worried about upset and confused patients contacting them. None of the participating doctors chose to turn off access to notes. I think this points more towards B, but the key phrase that really proves it is in between those quotes. These concerns were largely unrealized, or in other words, what the doctors were worried would happen didn't happen. Their assumptions were incorrect. There isn't really any mention of impact on patients. In fact, patients are only mentioned twice in the whole paragraph. In sentence 1, which states that they got access to test results in 2000, and then in sentence 2, which is about how doctors assumed patients would react, not the patients themselves. So B is the correct answer, and this was also chosen by 48% of the candidates submitting in advance. Now we're just going to look at one more question from text 2, but don't worry, all of the answers are being provided in the downloadable resource coming up shortly towards the end of the session. So let's just look at one more question together, and then we'll give you the answers to all of the questions. So the question is, what point does the writer make about vulnerable patients? And it's similar to question 16. It's also asking us to understand the point the writer is trying to communicate. So this time I'm going to use the other strategy, which is reading the options, then the text. So here are the 4 answer options. And I'll give you 30 seconds to read them and isolate the keywords on your own before I show you the text. All right, so here is the text. So scan through it, keeping those words that you've just isolated in your mind. And when you find the answer, or you think you're satisfied that you have evidence for the answer, pop it into chat. Which do you think was correct? A, B, C, or D? We're getting mostly answers coming through for B or C. First of all, let's have a look at C, which quite a few students were selecting. I think candidates that chose C in advance is probably as a result of reading this line. It's unlikely that all patients are aware of this exception. But if we look back at the previous sentence to understand what that exception is, we can see it is withholding information that might harm an individual patient. So this means what patients are unaware of is that harmful information can be withheld. This is a good match for the first half of the question, insufficiently informed, but not for the second half of the question. This is not what they are insufficiently informed about, only that they are insufficiently informed that they can have information withheld. So the correct answer is B. And we can see that both healthcare organizations and electronic health record vendors are mentioned as being able to share responsibility for keeping data safe. 46% of those submitting answers in advance got this question correct. Okay, so for those of you who were panicking a little bit, because I wasn't going through all of the answers for text 2, we're sharing into the chat now a downloadable resource which provides you with all of the answers for text 1 and text 2, as well as explanations of why each of those answer options was either right or wrong, using evidence from the text. And one option I think you can do to use this resource is to look at the answer option that is correct and then go and find the evidence yourself. So before you read why we have suggested the answer is right or wrong, have a go at finding the evidence for why the answer is right, and have a go at finding evidence for why the other answer options are wrong. It's a really good way of developing your skills for reading Part C. So how did you do? Let me know in chat how many questions from those 8 you got correct. Let's see if you were above the average, which you remember was about 3 for candidates that submitted in advance. How many did you get correct for that text? So we've got 3 coming in from Mahdi, 4 from Ratna, 6 from Balloon Cutter. Alex says only 1. Thank you for your honesty. Hopefully that resource that we're sharing now can help you understand more carefully what the answers are, or what the questions are asking, and how to determine which answer option is correct. And in total, I can tell you that across all 16 questions, the candidates that submitted in advance were getting on average 7.9, so nearly half the questions correct. But there's still work to improve on that score. So let's recap the advice from today's session. How can you improve your score for reading Part C? So the strategies that you use in Part B that we discussed yesterday will also help you with reading Part C, rephrasing the question, isolating keywords in the answer options, eliminating the incorrect answers to leave the correct answer. Another strategy that can work for you, which we tried today, is to read the text before looking at the answer options, to try to settle in your own mind what the main point is in the paragraph and to avoid being distracted by the answer options. I would recommend trying all of the strategies that we've discussed in this week of classes on reading, and work out which ones work best for you, which ones you have most success with. It's likely you'll use 2 or 3 different strategies within one text. So don't think that just one is the best one for you. You could find that having a number of strategies work better for you on different questions. Advice 3 is keeping something in the tank for text 2. So if you're losing concentration or starting to doubt yourself, as we talked about earlier, this can be because your levels of concentration for 45 minutes are weak and you're unable to look at each question with fresh eyes. Perhaps you're continuing to worry about previous answers while starting the next question. So it's important to build up your reading stamina by increasing how long you read every day as part of your preparation for the test. Piece of advice 4 is to be vigilant about your time. You can't expect to get a high score in Part C if you don't give yourself enough time. So be vigilant about only allowing 10 minutes for the Part B questions, and split your time in Part C to be a roughly 17 minutes for each text. Move on if you can't answer a question within 2 minutes, but it's best to allow a full 2 minutes on each question, as some you might find more straightforward to answer than others. And And make sure you give yourself sufficient time in text 2. Some of you were saying you only have 10 minutes at the end for text 2. You're not going to be able to answer those 8 questions accurately with only that amount of time. So work on spreading your time more evenly between text 1 and text 2 as well. And the last piece of advice, to say it again, read more. This returns to the advice and tips I was giving out on Monday, and we'll talk again about those tips tomorrow. But the best way to improve your score in reading is simply to read more and read more regularly. Our new complete guide to reading part C is adding to a link now. So we'll add that into the chat, and we'll get the tips and strategies to you as a link now for part C. All right, that's the end of today's session on reading part C, which means it's time for today's prize giveaway. And our friends at Cambridge University Press and Assessment have offered us 2 copies of their brand new OET trainer books to give away. Today is your last chance to win a free copy of one of those books. So the OET trainer contains 6 complete sample tests, including step-by-step training, hints and tips for test-taking techniques, downloadable answer keys with explanations like the one we're sharing today of why answers are right or wrong, as well as audios and further exercises. And the winner will be able to choose to receive either the nursing or medicine version and receive it in the mail from us. The only small print is that we're only able to post to unrestricted countries for shipping. So if one of our winners ends up being in a restricted shipping country, we will offer a prize of equal value. How do you get involved? The most important details. To enter, go to the link that we are posting into the screen now. Type in your name and then wait while we give people a little bit of time to join. Once we get to the end, if you're number 1 or 2, please remember to take a screenshot of your position on your device. You'll need to email this to us at an address that I give you after the quiz. All right, so the link is in the chat now that you need, and let's see who is getting ready to play. All right, just a few more seconds. We'll try and get everybody in. All right, how are we doing for numbers? Yep, I'll just give 5 more seconds to get in there. All right, let's hit start, Alex. Here we go. Good luck, everybody. So all the questions today are on reading part C. How many questions are there in reading part C? 6, 16, 20, or 42? So part of the knack here is to be quick, but also accurate. So who can be fastest to answer? Who can be most accurate? 5 seconds to go. And the correct answer is, of course, 16. Let's see who's topping the leaderboard at the moment. All right, McKay, well done to you, but it can all change in the next 4 questions. So let's go to question 2. Which American medical school was mentioned in text 1, Planning for the Future? Was it Boston University, Harvard, Eastern Virginia, or Melbourne? Hint, one of those is not even in America. Which was the correct medical school mentioned in text 1? 5 seconds left. Correct. It was Boston University. Most of you remembered that correctly. And let's see what's that's done to the leaderboard. We've now got Aslam up at the top. Well done to you. All right, question 3. Rephrase this question to start with what. The fourth paragraph focuses on. There are some trick answers in there to hopefully make this a little bit easier. Remember, this is a strategy that we've been talking about during this week. Well done. Most of you got that correctly or correct. So it was, what does the fourth paragraph focus on? Has that changed our leaderboard? It has. We've now got Lendl up at the top. So 2 questions to go, still everything to play for. This question is worth double points. What was the title of text 2 in part C? Be careful, the first text is also mentioned here. You're looking for text 2. 5 seconds. Well done. Most of you hit the correct answer, which was Open Patient Records. That was the title of text 2. All right, what's the leaderboard looking like now? Oh, we've got, I can't quite read that. On the top, Gigo, it looks like. Well done to you. Final question. Let's go for it. What ability is worth developing to ensure you have enough energy for reading part C? Writing quickly, prediction, stamina, or fasting? 5 seconds. The answer was stamina. Well done to those of you who got that correct. So what is the final leaderboard looking like? Sadly, no prize for third place, but congratulations to Milani. Get ready to take a screenshot. Lei, who's number 2, and number 1, Gige. Well done. So Gige and Lei, please both take a screenshot on your device of your winning performance. And then we will tell you how to claim your prize. So let's go back to this screen. If you were one of those 2 winners, please send your screenshot through to us at oeteducation@oet.com.au, and we will contact you about getting your prize. Congrats. All right, so tomorrow is our very last session. We're going to be looking at how you can use this sample test we've been looking at all week for additional study purposes. And I'm going to check back with you on the reading goals that you set on Monday and your progress against them. So if you didn't catch Monday's session live, you might like to watch that session either on Facebook or YouTube so that you can set some goals ready to discuss tomorrow. And I've noticed a few error messages coming through about the link to our answer key. We'll sort that out and add it as a comment after the session. We'll get that link working again for you, and we'll submit that into the chat as soon as we've got it fixed after today's session. So thank you so much for joining me. Please join me again for the last session tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks. Bye for now.